law in New York is crystal clear. If you're riding a motorcycle in New York, you must, as a rider, wear a motorcycle helmet that is DOT approved, Department of Transportation approved. If you are a passenger on a motorcycle, you also must wear a DOT approved helmet. But what happens if you attach a GoPro to that helmet? Is that illegal? Is it a violation? Is it some sort of a ticket? Does it violate the Department of Transportation rules? I'm going to dive into all of this. And ultimately, can you get a ticket for this? Can you get arrested? My name is Rich Jaffe. I'm a motorcycle enthusiast. I'm a motorcycle lawyer, and I'm a podcaster. I'm here to give you some information that I think it's important for you to know. So before you sit out on the road and you wear a helmet and you have a GoPro attached to that helmet, I want you to know a couple of things. The first thing is that what you're going to be pulled over for is some sort of violation of the vehicle and traffic law. And let me play you a little video right now of how that usually plays out. Just listen to this video.
There's a, see just right where the church parking lot is, just the other bikes there? Yeah. Just pull on there, please, okay? How's it going? Good. So the reason why you guys were pulled in is we're going to do an equipment check on the bikes, and we're going to do a noise test on the bikes. So we can make sure everyone's got their insurance, driver's license, insurance, registration handy. That'll start the kind of expedite the process for you. We will do our absolute best to get you in and out as quick as we can.
Okay, that's what I like.
That's what I like. Okay, the GoPro on your helmet's actually legal.
Okay, there you have it. The police officer said the GoPro on your helmet is actually illegal. But is it really? Is it illegal? In New York State, let's take a look, okay? Now, in New York State, usually they will flag you over. They'll pull you over and say, you know, you have something attached to your helmet, and that's a violation of vehicle and traffic law, section 381. And I pulled up the actual statute for you, and it's quite a long statute. It goes on and on, probably for about 3 pages, and then you have notes about the statute. But I pulled out the relevant portion, which is subsection 6, and let's read it together here. It shall be unlawful for any person to operate or ride upon a motorcycle unless he wears a protective helmet of a type which meets the requirements set forth in section 571.218 of the Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standards, as may from time to time be amended. I don't see the word GoPro in there. I don't see the word attachment in there anywhere. It just makes a reference to some sort of Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standards that we're supposed to actually somehow find and dig up. But I did that, okay? I dug up the safety standards that they're actually talking about. And I want to also point out this very important part. Again, it does not mention the word GoPro. It doesn't mention Cardo. It doesn't mention Senna. It doesn't mention anything having to do with a GoPro or some sort of communication device attached to your helmet. But it does define the scope. And the scope says that this standard, okay, and that's the standard that the VTL refers to, establishes minimum performance requirements for helmets designed for use by motorcyclists and other motor vehicle users. Now, I'm using the word designed in a very hyper way, kind of hyperbolic way, because this really means that it's designed not for the end user, but for the designer of these motorcycle helmets. Because that actual regulation, which is what Department of Transportation actually refers to when it says it has to comply with our regulations, has to do with the circumference of the helmets, the design of the helmets. It has to have a strap on the helmet. It has to be able to withstand a certain sort of impact, all of these things. So it's more for the designer of the helmet or the manufacturer of the helmet, and not really the person who is actually using it. Now, the only thing I did find further on in that regulation having to do with appendages, if you will, to a helmet, it's buried in there. And this is what that statute says about what they call projections. And the projection is something, I guess, sticking out of the helmet. It says that a helmet shall not have any rigid projections inside its shell. Okay, no one's going to have a rigid projection inside its shell because that would stick your head. But it also says rigid projections outside any helmet shell shall be limited to those required for operation of essential accessories and shall not protrude more than 0.20 inches or 5 millimeters. And that is the only time that I have ever seen anything related to something sticking off of a helmet. And notice you don't see anything that says GoPro. It doesn't say anything about Cardo or Senna or telephone. It doesn't say any of these things. And it also makes reference to, it uses words like rigid, like a rigid protection, okay, inside the shell, rigid protections outside the shell. Okay, shall and limited to those for operation of essential. Arguably, it really could be said that something like a speaker or something that attaches to your helmet and attaches a speaker inside your helmet, warning you of traffic situations. Actually, that's pretty essential to me. I mean, it's really for safety. Or, you could make the argument that it's not even a rigid projection because it's attached to the helmet. But, if you fall or the helmet hits the ground, the first thing to go is the GoPro off the helmet, or the Cardo or the Senna off the helmet. Okay, now if it's somehow impeding your vision, okay, over your eyes or something like that, that's a different story. Okay, but what this really was designed for, these regulations were designed in the 60s and the 70s, and I had to go way back into the notes, into the conferences that all the lawmakers were having about the helmet regulations. And what these projection restrictions were really for was for spikes that actually were on top of the helmets that were rather popular in the 60s and 70s, that actually resembled what the Germans, the Nazis used to wear in World War II, when they had like sort of a spike on top of their helmet. And I have to agree with them, something like this looks pretty dangerous. I mean, if you fall, I don't want it to go through the helmet and somehow impact my head. I don't want to use it as a weapon. I mean, it looks pretty intimidating, if you will, and pretty unnecessary. It has nothing to do with something like a phone or speakers warning you of a pothole up ahead or any kind of roadway hazard. So I can see that. But beyond that, I don't know how they would possibly make something like this stick. And the only thing is that I would warn all of you as motorcyclists, despite the fact that this law seems somewhat, it seems very weak, okay? And there's a definite gray area. But don't kill the golden goose, the goose that lays the golden eggs. That's really what I mean to say. Because if you take this law off the books, and if you argue hard enough to take this law off the books, what's going to happen is the lawmakers are going to make a really tight law that can be enforced, and they will be able to hold up in court. All right, right now, it may or may not be able to be held up in court, but if they pull you over for it, and then they start giving you tickets because they use that as their probable cause, as their initial entry point to pull you over and say, okay, your mufflers are too loud, you don't have a license, you don't have a registration, you have a bunch of other violations, and they give you tickets. Guess what? That all goes away as what we call the fruit of the poisonous tree. If that initial ticket that they give you because of a helmet violation, because you have something sticking off of it like a Cardo or a GoPro, is incorrect, then all the rest of them go away. So the time to fight this is not when you're getting the ticket. The time to fight it is in court. So if you get pulled over for one of these things, my advice to you is be respectful. Second, do not cooperate, but still be respectful. And what I mean is you don't have to take any testing, okay, like breathalyzer tests. You don't have to do that willfully or voluntarily, okay? You don't have to answer questions willfully, voluntarily, but you do have to give them information. So identify yourself, okay, and get the tickets, and then hire a lawyer. Okay, that's my advice to you, and be careful what you wish for with these laws. So I see this law particularly as pretty wishy-washy, and you have a good chance of beating it at the very least. So again, my name is Richard Jaffe. If you like what you hear here, then do me a favor, hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, and share this information. It really would help me out. And drop me a comment if you want to see anything in particular. Until then, you can always get me at ridingcounsel.com. Just punch it up on your phone, ridingcounsel.com. And there's a click to call. I'll be on the other end of the phone. And until then, I want you guys to ride free, ride wild, but do so legally and safely, everybody. You take care.
And that's a wrap for this episode of Riding Counsel with Richard Jaffe. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed the ride, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share with your fellow riders. Until next time, keep the rubber side down and ride safe.